Welcome to Boil the Frog Slowly, a radio program that goes where corporate media stops, where each week we ask the questions: are politics hazardous to your health? Are the decisions and incremental changes being made by government and industry creating health problems? What are they? Why don't you know about them? What can you do about it? Not only do we ask the questions, we furnish answers with unparalleled documentation, research, studies, and guests from around the globe, with proof that unequivocally show that yes, politics are hazardous to your health, and you had better be informed before it's too late. Boil the Frog Slowly. A cute name? No. It's what's happening right now to you and me and the rest of the world as we placidly float in a slowly simmering pot of subtle changes. And those who hold the recipe to this agenda count on the fact that we won't notice the heat until we're sufficiently boiled, unable to resist. I'm Pat.
And I'm Sebastian.
And today we're stirring the pot. Thanks for joining us. All right, Sebastian, this is the big time today. We've got an awesome guest.
Yes, we do. This is a really, really special guest today.
Okay, let me tell folks who we have. It is Josh Del Sol. He is the director and producer of Take Back Your Power, investigating the smart grid, his first feature-length film. Take Back Your Power has, in 2014, been named winner of the AwareGuide Transformational Film of the Year, the IndieFest Annual Humanitarian Award, and Leo Award for Best Featured Documentary in British Columbia. Now, we all know that utilities around the world are racing to install smart utility meters, which are emerging as anything but smart. Well, Josh's award-winning feature documentary, Take Back Your Power, uncovers shocking evidence of in-home privacy invasions, increased utility bills, health and environmental harm, fires, and unprecedented hacking vulnerability, and lights the path towards solutions. Well, he has been our hero around here for quite some time, so it is with honor and with great pleasure to welcome you to the show, Josh.
Yeah, welcome, Josh.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for having me on. Really appreciating your work as well. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Oh, well. We think that anyone listening to this interview will most likely knows about smart meters and their associated problems. So let's focus on awareness and what each and every listener can do to make a positive change. And since you are the crusader when it comes to awareness, let's briefly tell us and start out, what prompted you to make the now game-changing movie, Take Back Your Power?
I had a job, actually, as a small business owner, and most of my clients were local government-oriented, provincial government-oriented in British Columbia. And that, I just basically, like many people, I started asking a question, is what I'm doing serving the greater good, or am I just looking to be comfortable? So at the same time, I was finding out a lot about various agendas, corporate programs that are causing harm to our planet and our people. So I just basically quit my job. I gave up, $50,000 worth of work that I had lined up, and kind of went on sabbatical and took 3 months to just kind of figure out what I wanted to do and how could I live my life more, make a difference actually. And I got back to British Columbia, and this whole smart meter issue, or so-called smart meter issue, kind of landed on my lap when I was hearing about that BC Hydro, the utility in BC, was wanting to install these meters, and there's all these problems with them, and many, many people already in California. This was the summer of 2011, and many people in California were getting sick. Obviously, most of your listeners are pretty aware of the basic facts and how the sickness, the illness, microwave sickness is one way to describe it, has been tremendously documented. There's been tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of cases now where people have actually connected the dots to the harm. But I was hearing about people getting sick and also the privacy issues and the cost issues at that time. And it wasn't until and I mentioned this in the beginning of Take Back Your Power, when a friend of mine got sick, and that happened the same hour. She felt it immediately, and her symptoms started to develop immediately without her even knowing anything about a meter install or having that awareness. And at that point, I just really got, kind of really upset, and I just was asking myself, why isn't this more available? Why isn't the information and truth and facts around this more readily available? I mean, what we're hearing is just the corporate media side, the utility side, the government side of things, which is trying to, calm people down and let them know everything's okay when it's obvious that there's something going on. So I just started interviewing people. I started interviewing people that have had sensitivities their whole life. I started interviewing people that, former Premier of British Columbia and other experts and doctors and whistleblowers in other areas. And what I thought was going to be a 20 or 30 minute YouTube film was, or just like a series of interviews on YouTube, turned out to be what it is today. Take Back Your Power. It's won several awards, and it's a full-length feature film that really, it's my best effort to blow the whistle on the entire agenda worldwide.
Wow, I mean, it's just really impressive, the worldwide notice that you've achieved and the attention that you've brought to this issue. Can you share with us what the international feedback has been since you've released your film?
Yeah, in some cases, actually, internationally, it's been slightly better than in North America, but there are communities and regions in North America that have totally woken up and they've got on board. We've done probably around 180 screenings so far in the 13 months now that the film has been out. It was released in September of 2013, and then the updated version was released in June of this year. So we've done screenings in the UK. I believe there was one in South Africa, several in Europe, quite a number in New Zealand and Australia. But yeah, probably about 30% of our outreach, of our sales is to those international countries who are likewise having the same issues. I mean, there's a political party, a national political party that some of your viewers may know about in Australia. Specifically, I believe it's even called the Stop Smart Meter Party, because of the tremendous awakening and pushback, especially in the state of Victoria in Australia, as one example. So the reception, the audience, grassroots reception has been tremendous, but we still do need help in getting the film and the movement and the awareness into the mainstream.
So how could people get a showing or a filming done, or I should say a viewing done at is it a local theater? Is that how you propose to get towns involved?
We have recently teamed up with a website called Tugg, TUGG.com, and Tugg has relationships with theaters all over North America right now, mostly in the United States, some in Canada, and they've just recently started things in Australia and New Zealand. And what that enables is for anyone to have the film shown in a theater for no upfront cost. So if you're passionate about this issue, go to our website, which is takebackyourpower.net. Click under screenings. There's a button there for host a screening. And all this is made available and explained to you there as far as Tugg theatrical screenings. And for those that do not want to screen in a theater, you want to do a smaller venue or rent out or do a free screening at your local library, you can. There's an option there as well for community screenings. And we've done that's most of the screenings so far around the world have been community screenings. So we're trying to make it as simple, as easy as possible for people. There's no license fee in either of those options. We do ask that they have DVDs available, which we can provide at wholesale or below for their viewings. But basically, yes, there's theatrical screenings, community screenings available on our site. And we've also recently made it available for broadcast permission. So we had our U.S. broadcast debut approximately 6 weeks ago on PBS in Colorado, and that was a great success there. And basically, since then, have made it available that anyone who wants to show the film, whether it be a PBS station, a larger station, or your community access channel, there is another page, another form that you can fill out under screenings on takebackyourpower.net. So there are definitely a number of options. If you want to get the word out, I basically wanted this film to be a tool that anyone and everyone who wants to get the word out about this issue can use as cost effectively as possible.
Right. And so what has your experience been once a group, a town, sees and views the movie? What call to action have you seen as a consequence? Have you seen positive action being taken?
Yes, absolutely. People get, they need to do, they want to do something about it. They need to put their newfound awareness and, it could be frustration or anger, perhaps even fear. They want to move that, because people, you don't want to stay in that. You want to keep that energy moving and into solutions. And quite a number of towns have, in the process of having a screening or several in their community, then have gotten together. They've collected contact info at the screening after the film, and they've established a group, and many other cities have done this without using the film, but the film really helps it to just kind of make the outreach in a really concise, clear way in an hour and a half is what we found. So basically have a screening, collect contact information, make a decision that you're not going to allow this to happen in your area, or if it's already been installed, there are and will be coming in the near future solutions for you to enforce the liability of the harm that's currently being done when the meter's in your area. There's a smaller city in southern Colorado, Pagosa Springs. I was actually there in person for a screening in July. There was about 50 or 60 people there. Even some, I think one or two of the utility reps were there, which is great to see. They're coming out and they want some information too, but they may also wish to dissuade the people from believing in the facts as presented. But nevertheless, there was a really good turnout for that screening, and since then, people have the movement has grown. There was a meeting earlier this month in October that the utility held, and the people there were so engaged that I think it said the writer of the article said that the utility held the floor for exactly 2 minutes and 40 seconds before the people started holding their feet to the fire and asking them all these straightforward questions, which actually you can hear audio clips of how the people were holding the utility's feet to the fire in this article. I mean, once you awaken to the facts, you can't unlearn them, and so the only way forward is to get together and to take a stand and realize that maybe we've been in this battle for a while, and maybe our utility is trying to force this on us and extort money from us in an opt-out punitive fee. But let us not give up, because I can tell you for certain that there is another level of remedy coming. And I mentioned this just briefly a few minutes ago, but we are in the process of developing something that will enforce the liability upon the organizations and especially upon the individuals who are causing this harm. And it's a tremendous amount of harm. So we're working with high numbers and helping people understand their creative ability to deny consent and to create contract agreement, or to essentially spin the offer of having a smart meter, spin it back around on the utility because it is causing harm, and make them liable for a large sum of money. And everyone has the power to do this, but we have not been trained to do this. That's the problem.
Now, do you have that on your solutions page on your website? Is that what you're referring to?
There is a version of an earlier version, and it is a very effective document as well on our website under solutions. So that's the main section, or it's going to be the main kind of section on our website. But if you go to the solutions page, there's a link to a document called Notice and Demand concerning trespassing technology. And there's a notice there, a template that you can fill out and send in. There's an affidavit template there as well. And an affidavit's just a statement of truth. It's basically a sworn statement of truth. We're finding that, first of all, for somebody to fill out and send in a form without, having an expensive lawyer sit down with them who's charging them several $1,000s to tell them to do things a certain way, people aren't used to that. When we're standing up for ourselves and when we're basically saying, no, you can't do that, there's an element, and some people don't have this. I don't want to say that everyone goes through this process of fear, but for example, I did in making this film, and every time I really set my mind and my heart to get this message out, there's this kind of this veil of fear, this fear of whatever it is, and that those are, just not there to stop us. They're there to help propel us to continue to get the word out. There is a process of when we send in a notice, or when we send in something that's specifically saying, I'm going to hold you liable for millions of dollars if you continue with this agenda, or if you don't get this meter removed, or if you can't disprove these 12 points of truth that I have in my affidavit, you're going to be liable because those are my conditions on the offer, on your offer of installing a smart meter. So it's like buying a house. They've made an offer to install smart meters that we actually have the ability to accept or reject. We've just forgotten that ability, and they're not telling us we have that ability. So if we do something called, like, for example, a conditional acceptance, now we've attached conditions onto the offer. I conditionally accept that you have the right to harm me with this technology if you can disprove these points of fact in this affidavit. And if you can't, then you're going to be liable for $10 million and X thousands of dollars per day that the meter is on my house. Now, a lot of people think this is sovereign movement or some, fringe thing or whatever. It's not. It's actually contract law. It's actually commercial law. It's using civil codes. It's using maxims of law that lawyers and corporations have been using for hundreds of years, in many cases. And it's taking their system, the way that they bind us into agreement with them, and it's taking that system and turning it back around upon them and using it against themselves to bind them, because they have initiated the so-called contract offer of having a smart meter. They are causing the harm. So it's this switch in thinking that, we actually are not subject to pick one of their opt-out options for not having a smart meter, whether it's having a digital meter, a non-transmitting smart meter, or an analog meter. We're not subject to their terms or their in BC Hydro, it's called the legacy meter fee, or the opt-out program. That is simply, when they send you that letter, that's everything that they send you is a contract offer, and you have the ability to either accept or choose one of those terms or one of their their poisons, or not, or just refute it in writing and further your own process against them, enforcing liability against them. So this is something that it's a technique that has been proven. I know specifically one of the individuals working with us, who is an expert, who's been doing this for many, many years, has seen more than a dozen public officials step down, because what this process does is actually call them out on the corruption. In addition to making them liable, it's presenting truth at a high level. So this is something that, these are some principles of commerce and understanding contracts, understanding our ability to either give or remove consent, that we are in the process of making available to everyone who wants to get a so-named smart meter off their house. Now, I just want to say one thing, is there may or may not be a campaign to try to discredit this kind of process, to try to put people into fear, or to try to, marginalize this process. That may be part of it. And obviously, when you think about how much vested interest there is in this worldwide energy grid, we're talking about trillions of dollars. It's just something that you have to be aware is going to happen. But, as we move forward in this, in a higher level of understanding of our rights and of truth, all of the corruption that's coming out in the world, let us listen to that truth in our minds, but also in our heart. Feel it. Is it the right thing to do? Does it feel good for me to actually take a stand, to not listen to those programs of fear in the back of my mind, in the reptilian brain, but to actually take a stand and to protect life with the growing numbers of individuals around me to do so? Because that's the voice that I'm doing my best to listen to. I think that's the voice that's going to get us through this time of tremendous crisis on the planet.
You're right, Josh. In the long run, having that document on file, that could really hold a lot of weight when needed down the road in fighting this battle.
Jerry Day, who's interviewed in Take Back Your Power, he has a YouTube video. Anyone can do a search on it. It's on our website. You can just do a search for The Power of Paper. So it's a 5-minute video on affidavits and explaining what they are, how they work. He puts it in context. He uses a graphic illustration. And I highly recommend that for everyone to whom this topic is new, as a primer to understand. There's a whole other level of rights that we have yet to access as a movement and as a civilization, I suppose.
Josh, is this applicable if someone already has a smart meter on their home, or did you give the implied consent by not saying anything before it was installed?
In contract law, which is the basis of all transactional law or commerce, there is a necessary element of the meeting of the minds. And in that aspect of a contract, of a valid agreement, the truth has to be disclosed. Both parties, if one party is trying to impose agreement on the other, the truth has to be disclosed. The facts have to be disclosed. The fact that they have not been and are not being by utilities or governments in the smart meter issue, that's a obviously that's a huge infraction in the way that that the law is supposed to operate and contracts are supposed to operate. But that also means that at any time when you come into awareness of a new facts, new information, a new truth, then you can remove your consent. So we are not bound by any stretch of the imagination to put up with having a so-named smart meter on your home or anywhere around you. It could be even the neighbor's home, okay? Because it's contract-based. It's not based upon your having an account with a specific account number with the utility. It is based upon, your rights and your full rights, all rights reserved, and is there harm being done? So, if you really understand this process, it can branch out and your effect can ripple out far greater than just the meters on your home, which is something that, groups that we're working with to use this process, we're beginning to understand how that all works. So, yes, does that answer your question? I feel like I kind of went off on a tangent there.
No, you absolutely answered the question. I think this is extremely empowering. I have people calling me constantly. What can we do? I just got a notice that said they're coming tomorrow, and the only thing you could do is you put it in writing, whether it's going to stop it today, at least maybe in the future, if this ever comes down where they are held liable, at least you will have put them on notice. So once you get this solutions page where you want it to be, we need to hit this hard.
Yeah, we really need people to become aware of their rights, become aware of remedies that are available to them. So in the meantime, in addition to checking out Jerry's video called The Power of Paper on YouTube, I'd recommend to all your listeners to go to our website, takebackyourpower.net, enter your email address where it says, I believe it says get the updates or subscribe to the updates, because everyone who's on our email address is going to be sent an email and updated when these resources are made available. And in the meantime, we're continuing to get out empowering, insightful news on the so-named smart meter issue and the movement around it with an email about once a week. So I just would encourage people to get plugged in and just start to really do some research on your own, whether it's on our website or on YouTube, and find out about contract law, learn about affidavits, learn about consent, and check out even the civil codes in your state or province, because many times it's even written in the civil codes. For example, in the state of California, it's actually written in the civil code that an unrebutted notice is law, is agreed upon a contract within, if it's not rebutted, within 5 days of it being sent, I believe is the number of days there. So this is again, it's in the mainstream laws that they use, that this is how they're binding you with with notices, with sending you information, whether it's in the fine print on your utility bill, or whether it's in the newspaper, or whether it's on their website. That's all giving you notice, giving you information that if you do nothing about in writing, then you have offered your implied consent. So what I'm talking about, and where I believe many activist movements are going, is removing your consent and enforcing liability at the same time. So when you write your utility back, whatever form or document or process you use, it's important to with each letter you send, you escalate the process. You move towards enforcing the liability. You're not just asking for your rights not to have a meter. That may work, and if there's enough people that do that, that has more power, obviously. But rather than asking for your rights, or rather than even demanding that, okay, I don't want a meter, period, and leaving it at that, that doesn't really have a lot of teeth in it as far as creating other motivation for the utility or the government that's trying to push this through. So we highly recommend the process of enforcing liability and learning how to do that properly through something, for example, like a conditional acceptance.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really disgusting how the governments have forced us on the defensive here. I mean, we literally are having to scramble and be defensive just to protect our own health and our own home. And these are all excellent remedies and suggestions that you're bringing up here. And Josh, I am a subscriber to your email, and just today I was looking at that article on Pagosa Springs in Colorado, and I listened to those 2 audio clips that you mentioned before, and I'd like to share with our listeners a very interesting point that was brought out on those audio clips. And this is at the utilities meeting. These townspeople came and talked to the utilities people, and they were talking about the opt-out fee that was being imposed on them, and I think it was like $50 a month. And one of the people in the crowd really brought it out that that's technically double dipping, because the meter reading fee is already included in your current utility bill, and for them to tack on another one is just completely unjustified, and it is a form of extortion. And interestingly, in that meeting, the utility company didn't have any response for that point. And I think it's important to talk about this now, because as we're speaking here, smart meters are being rolled out here in Ohio and across the country. I think at this point they're at least on every other home here in Northeast Ohio. And people need to know that when they get charged extra meter reading fees for opting out, that's really just technically double dipping, right, Josh?
Absolutely, and that article is so good. I was so pleased to reprint that and also include those clips in there, because the author, a woman named Diana from Pagosa Springs, she highlighted, there's a list of something like 20 or 25 bullet points of it's just straightforward truth in short sentences or points or phrases of truth, and just helping to see all of that information all in one go, in addition to actually having the audio clips. I mean, that's one of my favorite articles that's on our website, period. And that is a very true fact that you bring up, that second audio clip on that article mentions is a very pointed question. Are not meter readers currently being paid? Having analog meters.
Absolutely.
And they were forced to admit that yes, they're paying their meter readers, and yes, it is built into the current rate structure. So I mean, that right there, when you really understand that, and don't take their sleight of hand or their sideways propagandic answers at face value at all, ever, on any issue, but especially this question. They're already paying meter readers. That's already built into the rate structure. So absolutely, it's double dipping. It's extortion. It's probably some form of embezzlement, but definitely there's big time liability that needs to be attached to it.
Yeah, that is a huge point. Thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. I didn't even really put that together because, I mean, we have been focusing on that here. We've been in touch with state representatives, trying to get them to write state legislation that will also include not forcing an opt-out fee on us. And we've also been in touch with the public utilities in Ohio, the PUCO, and they are going to work in an opt-out fee in their legislation. So this is a big issue, and people are going to have a rude awakening on their bills, if they don't do something now to preempt this.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely people power. Numbers of people is required. Secondly, numbers of dollars of liability being enforced and properly enforced is required. So a combination of that, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's necessary that in a movement like this, Sebastian and Pat, do you think it's necessary that people have to feel the pain? They have to feel like they're being screwed in order to go through that, kind of like initially feeling like disempowerment or helplessness or frustration, and then kind of transforming that to anger, and then transforming that into action, and then transforming that into like, a higher place of empowerment coming from love or coming from protecting life. I mean, how do you see the movement and like kind of the human psyche?
I think we both agree with that. We're sitting here shaking our heads, and
we're seeing it firsthand here that really the only people that are doing something about this issue are the ones that are feeling it and suffering.
And I think here's another thing that goes on, especially in these times. People are working 24/7. I mean, families, parents, everybody is so entrenched in just making a living, just getting by, that there's nothing left emotionally, mentally, to try to wrap your head around what's going on here. And so, many times people just don't.
You said something there, unless people feel it, then they're not really likely to take action or to actually do something about it, because there's just so much going on with life. I think that's definitely a factor at play. People need to feel it, or they need to see it, or there needs to be some other cognitive interaction of when this, with having the smart meter on your house that's pulsing microwave radiation every few seconds, and affecting people by default at a cellular level, affecting, like you say, DNA, and Dr. Martin Blank has researched that extensively. He's just written a book called Overpowered. But there's thousands and thousands of study that shows the harm. But most people cannot, because we can't see it, we can't taste it or touch it or smell it. It doesn't kind of interface with our awareness, with our senses, and how our brain works and how our cognitive abilities work. And something that we've done just recently is to start offering at as cheaply rate as possible these little electrosmog meters, which actually the new ones have sound built in, so you can, they're a little digital tester that tests how much the spikes are, how much radiation the smart meters produce. So, and what we found was smart meters actually produce between 1,000 and 10,000 times maximum peak radiation, microwave radiation, compared to a cell phone. 1,000 to 10,000 times higher maximum values than a cell phone, with both, for example, the same distance away from the testing device. So if you take a cell phone that's 2 feet away from it, you take a so-named smart meter that's 2 feet away from it, depending on the make and model of the smart meter, and depending on the cell phone and how good of a connection it has, how many bars of connection, the average difference between those two power density measurements is 1,000 to 10,000 times. So that's for people to understand that, and actually see that on a device, and be able to prove that, and be able to show someone that, be able to turn the audio button on that device. This is something that if Take Back Your Power is the most effective tool that people are using to spread awareness, a device like this has to be the second most powerful. So we've recently just bought a box of them, and they're available on our site on takebackyourpower.net, and I think we're something like $30 below the suggested amount. We're selling them for just under $140 for one of these devices. For those people who are interested in understanding and sharing the information and finding out how much radiation is on their house, and then using those facts in a powerful and constructive way. So we decided to do that after the first year that the film was out, we didn't want to be associated with any products. We just wanted to focus on the film, and that would be it. But right now I'm seeing the necessity of, okay, number one, supporting our project, my continuing work along with our small team here financially, as well as helping people to get empowered with other tools that can help the awareness spread quicker. Because, we were talking a moment ago about how it's frustrating that it takes so long to spread the awareness within groups, within, group consciousness, because there's a longer lead time, decades in the cases of smoking and asbestos and DDT, and we don't have that. So we have the film, though, Take Back Your Power. It's an hour and a half long, and people get pretty awakened in that amount of time. And we have the ability of communicating through the internet, through emails and Facebook and so forth, to help movements grow more rapidly. So it's just finding those channels and how people can receive information, how they can ingest it, digest it, and then helping them to get to constructive action as soon as possible. I feel we really need to think about, and because we do seem to be like an 11th hour species, don't we?
I think you're really wise to offer the meters. Right before the interview, Sebastian and I were chatting here, and we said the very same thing. You need to make the invisible visible, because otherwise no one has a clue. And you mentioned cell phones, and I think that might be a great key here, because everyone has a cell phone and everyone understands why they feel like they absolutely need a cell phone, or the Wi-Fi in schools. Maybe smart meters, oh, well, it's on my house, it's not a problem. But if people can begin to connect the dots and understand, all right, if it's harming me with the cell phone, or if the iPad is harming, well, then obviously the smart meter is harming. So I think there's also a way where we need to connect all of these technological devices together, and so that folks understand that it's, not just a smart meter, it's, on my garage, no problem.
I wholeheartedly agree. And what's going on with them, especially in the United States, seems to be pushing this most fervently, is with Wi-Fi in schools. That is a recipe for absolute disaster. I mean, there's Anura Lawson, who's a teacher in Los Angeles. She's in Take Back Your Power. And she recently, won the right from the school board to have the Wi-Fi turned off in her classroom. Mm-hmm. She was presenting evidence, and you can see this, it's on YouTube, her evidence to, I believe it's the school board committee, speaking of how, since they turned the Wi-Fi on, like several kids, there's been 2 kids with bleeding ears, for example, and just the difference in cognitive ability and the behavior of the children with the Wi-Fi in the classrooms is like night and day in many cases, if not most cases. But because, it's kind of like there's this veil where we got to go through to understand how, since we are electromagnetic beings, how all of this microwave radiation is actually affecting us on a very fundamental level, and to be able to connect the dots between the source of that issue, which is largely electromagnetic radiation, and the effect of the issue, behavioral differences, learning difficulties, ADHD, physical symptoms, bleeding in the ears, for crying out loud. That is where we need to go as a species, and also understanding in the greater context even how the dots connect between electromagnetic radiation and metals in the body, and the metals that are part of many, many vaccines. So the metals in the body, an increasing amount of research actually showing that the metals in the body, the more metal in the body, the more the body functions as an antenna for these frequencies to further cause, an increase in autism and autism spectrum disorders and ADHD and so forth, and behavioral problems in kids. So there's a combination of factors, and that, that may seem overwhelming to understand. Okay, it's not just electromagnetic radiation. There's other things going on that are causing the effect. But let's get ourselves aware first, and let's focus on what we can do, and take the path of action and empowerment and spreading the word and spreading the truth because that's, people coming together on this issue is what I feel is going to shift this entire movement.
And let's take this opportunity to help direct our listeners on how to become properly aware, because any thinking person out there is going to want to do their own research on their own. And I'm personally finding that with people. I can talk till I'm blue in the face, but then they're going to go get on the computer and start researching and try to make a conclusion on their own. And
absolutely, yeah.
And that's what I did when I started having EHS symptoms at work. I got on the computer, and lucky for me, I found the bioinitiative report right off the bat, and that kind of got me on the right track. When people try to go get informed and educated, we need to help them in that process here, Josh. And I'm happy to say Pat and I are helping with that with our interviews, and you are making a tremendous effort with your EMF Summit. And I would recommend people go to sources like that to get educated, because they're really not going to get the truth from government sources, right?
Absolutely, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Do the research on your own and verify the facts for yourself before, taking my word for it, even the film's word for it, and Pat and Sebastian's word for it. This is absolutely an imperative part of the process for you to verify yourself the depth of this issue, why it's so critical, and how it's been scientifically firmly established, but that science is keeping is being kept from us by for-profit corporations who have infiltrated the power centers in our society. Another site that I like to refer people to is justproveit.net.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When somebody says, "Well, where's the science?" Well, you mentioned there's thousands of studies that indicate harm from this kind of radiation. Well, where is it? You go to justproveit.net and you click on, I believe, under science and then studies. There is, I believe, something like 5,000 studies linked on that. There's a huge database of papers, their names, and so and even I wanted to say and address that the CDC had this past summer, and I think it was late June or early July, they had released a statement on their website to the effect that people should take caution with their cell phones. And that kind of went viral, especially amongst the activist community. Joel Moskowitz, a researcher at Berkeley, I believe, put out a press release about that. He caught that, he found it out. And in August, they actually redacted the statement. They just deleted it, and they just put industry spin back in. So, I'm thinking that, okay, we have the FCC, who, for some reason, they've been tasked with providing a, quote, safety guideline. They are funded by industry. The chairman of the FCC is a, lifelong, basically, career senior lobbyist with the cellular telecom industry.
Tom Wheeler, who bought his position as chairman of the FCC with a $1 million check to President Obama. Mm-hmm. This is how it's working. I mean, this is literally the amount of corporate corruption that is in our so-called government is absolutely astounding. The more I research into it, the more I see the how things are working. So, that's the kind of mentality that is running things. And it seems like they're heavily resisting any form of truth, any form of reasoning with them, because they're just so single-minded on this agenda. So we need to somehow help people like that, whether it's through enforcing massive amounts of liability, or whether it's through other means, to help them wake up and help them to get reconnected with a sense of life and the source of life and values of life. Josh, you really helped me connect the dots on how things are really working. When you brought out a term that just really made sense when you defined what it means, and that term is technocracy. Can you share with us exactly what that means?
Well, technocracy is the rule by essentially technicians, engineers, government through technology. So it's the rule through technology. And there's been several researchers in recent years have made it easy for us to understand how this is currently functioning in our society and the history of it. One of them, whose name is Patrick Wood, and I don't agree with everything, his in other perspectives necessarily that he has, but he is a tremendous researcher on technocracy and tracing it back to even the 1930s, where there was a movement called technocracy. That was actually the title of the movement, and there were 500,000 members at one point.
Yeah, 1932, Columbia University is where it started.
There you go, yeah. And so that never really went away. I mean, it kind of went underground, and people like Zbigniew Brzezinski in the 70s and 80s really, helped to bring it to the forefront of policymaking. And if you research Zbigniew Brzezinski, that's another dot to connect to see, how the Trilateral Commission and other corporate globalist groups factor into the plans for a quote Internet of Things. It's what it's being called right now, and having a so-called smart grid where all of the resources are controlled and where information can be retrieved instantly. Like, the dots actually do connect, but that's not a reason to go into more fear or go into more an idea that it's just too overwhelming to do anything about. But actually, it's when you can trace it historically and you see how technocracy has been woven through high levels in our society, and some of the plans that are currently being realized with the smart grid were actually talked about as far back as the 1970s. Then we have the ability to start bringing the solution out. We have the ability to get at the root of the issue by, again, I believe it's by enforcing a massive amount of liability to the individuals causing the harm.
I think you're right about that. They have to feel the threat in their pocketbook.
Yeah, I think so. And at the same time, it's not doing it out of anger. It's not doing it out of hatred, but it's doing it out of protecting of life. And I think that's the other element. Like, this is kind of the hidden key that I feel like both this movement and every movement of where we're trying to shift a big story on the planet will be successful is the connection to the greater good. Why are we doing this? Do we see the opposition as the enemy? Do we hate them as human beings? Or do we see them as being disconnected spiritually, so they're not able to have a proper set of values in alignment with life? So, what can we do? How can we imbue or add into whatever process and action we take that sense of connection to the higher good? And that's a balance that I'm currently exploring. But my intuition is that, okay, if we can somehow do this out of love and can really inspire people, then that's going to shift everything.
And I think that's going to be a beautiful way to wrap this up, because it's such a horrible topic. So let's wrap it with some love and see if we can approach it from that standpoint. So with that in mind, help our listeners. Where can they go to find everything they need to know about you and your film, and how they can get started with maybe doing a showing or a viewing of their own?
Absolutely. TakeBackYourPower.net. We have DVDs for sale. You can watch the film online. You can stream it and download it currently. And as mentioned, there's screenings available. We're doing our best to make it freely available. All these options: a screening in a theater with Tug, screening in a community, in your community, just as a private event or a smaller event, and having the film shown on television. Click that request to broadcast button if you're in touch with your local cable access provider or your local PBS station, or anyone who you feel should be showing Take Back Your Power. Get in touch with them, and after you establish contact, and you mentioned there's an award-winning documentary that we need to show. After you get them on board a little bit, send us that form submission through the website, and we'll be glad to support that with you. So definitely just encourage everyone to get plugged in. There's other tremendous websites as well. So we have a international directory on our website under the menu button called Connect. There's a directory of several hundred groups, and which needs to be updated because there's more coming in all the time. But find out, who are the groups in your area that are engaged in this issue, and if you're in a group, there's a button for you to let us know so that we can help promote your group and help other people connect into your group. So this is a tremendously exciting time. There's so much we can do, but the first step is just getting connected in and making a decision that you're going to be part of the movement that is going to really help to bring the movement to stop smart meters up to the next level.
Right.
So I just thank you both for the time that you set aside in your lives and getting this message out and getting so much good information out, and really enjoy talking with you.
Oh, it's been our pleasure, right?
Yeah, same here, Josh.
Thank you so much, and we will always continue to promote you on our website as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us on Boil the Frog Slowly Radio. Please come back next week, and for more information, go to the website boilthefrogradio.com. And until next week, remember to practice safe phone.
Boil the frog slowly, you're a frog in a pot. Turn out the heat and things will get hot. Will you jump out or will you burn? Listen to the show and you will return to Boil the Frog slowly.